probably pasted an API key into a tool at some point, or you have avoided doing it because something about the words felt slightly hostile. Either way, you are not behind, you are not stupid, you are mostly the victim of an industry that explains its own building materials as if you should already know what they are. And yes, before you ask. The jacket is on purpose. Apparently it matches the seriousness of the topic. Or so I am told at least. So in this video, 3 things. First, what an API key actually is. Not the technical definition, the useful one. Second, the 5 questions worth asking before pasting one anywhere. And third, the part nobody warns you about, which is that the moment you understand keys, you also understand why most AI and creator tools are designed the way they are. That last part changes how you will look at every tool we cover after this one. So let us remove one small piece of unnecessary drama first. An API key is not dark magic, it is mostly paperwork with consequences. Here's the first useful definition. An API key is a credential, a long string of characters. It identifies a project, an account, an application, depending on the provider. What it really does is much simpler. It is a controlled way for software to say, I am allowed to ask this service for something. That something could be YouTube data, or text-to-speech, or an AI model response or a translation, or a search result. So the key is not the service, the key is the door handle. You will notice the door is still there even after the handle is broken. You will also notice that nobody has ever stolen a door, but plenty of people have walked through one because the handle was left lying around. Now, the interesting part is not that API keys exist. The interesting part is what they control. Before you paste a key anywhere, and this is the moment most tools hope you do not pause, there are 5 questions worth asking. Who created it? What can it access? Where is it stored? Who pays for the calls? And how can it be revoked? Those 5 questions are the difference between using software with your eyes open and just hoping the software behaves nicely. Most software, to be fair, does behave nicely. The 5 questions are not paranoia. They are the cost of not having to be paranoid. If the door handle metaphor was a bit abstract, here is the version with a building. An API key is like an access badge in an office. It does not make you the owner of the building. It does not open every door unless those permissions were granted. And if somebody copies your badge, that is a problem. So you do not hand it to strangers. You do not tape it to the front door. And if it is lost, you disable it. Look at what just happened. You learned 5 principles of access control in 20 seconds with no jargon. That is what good metaphors do. They smuggle complexity past the part of your brain that thinks it is bad at this. Now, the term BYOK. Bring your own key. It sounds technical. It is not. Instead of a SaaS platform hiding everything behind its own master account and its own master billing, you connect your own provider account to the tool. The tool can then work for you. But the key, the quota, the billing relationship, and often the data trail stay closer to you. That is the trust model. Not magic, not security theater, just a different position on a map. There is a trade-off. Setup takes a few extra minutes. You may need to create a project, enable an API, copy a key, set a quota, and paste it into a tool. That is not as smooth as a giant button that says just start. But convenience is not free. Sometimes the price of convenience is that you do not know who owns the connection, where your usage is happening, or what happens to your data after the result appears on your screen. Yes, BYOK takes a few extra minutes, so does locking your front door, and nobody has yet built a popular morning routine around leaving it open. Let us get practical. Where do API keys actually live? In the wild, they live in plain text, in random screenshots, in chat threads, in browser notes, in Notion docs called credentials to do, and this is the most common one, in folders that look like this. Old documents, named new final key copy, or real final this time, or temp do not delete actually do delete. We have all seen that file naming system. It is not a system, it is a cry for help with an extension. A better habit is simple. One key per purpose, a clear name at the provider, stored in a password manager or an encrypted vault, a quota set where the provider allows it, restricted by domain or IP where it makes sense. And if a key is exposed, revoke it and make a new one. Sounds like a lot. In practice, a few minutes of setup and a much calmer workflow afterward. One operator habit makes everything easier. Keep a small inventory, provider, purpose, created date, where it is stored, how to revoke it. Not a bureaucracy, just enough memory that 6 months from now, you are not interrogating your past self through file names. Because here is what happens otherwise. 6 months from now, future you finds an old key in an old project. Nobody remembers what it does. Nobody remembers which provider it belongs to. Nobody remembers if it is still active. Future you will, with growing concern, type that key into a search engine. That is not an inventory, that is an archaeological dig. If you want to skip the dig, we put the whole thing on one printable page. More on that in a minute. Now, how does this connect to this channel? A lot of the workflows we will discuss here are built around one idea. Your data, your keys, your channel, your decisions. That is not a slogan. It changes the architecture. With BYOK, exportability, and local handling, ownership has to exist somewhere, and we prefer it to stay with the operator, not in somebody else's basement. Nobody wakes up excited to configure credentials. Well, almost nobody. There are people in IT, we have our hobbies, we also organize our cables. We are not the protagonists of this story. But ownership has to exist somewhere, and if it does not exist with you, it exists with the platform. That is the only sentence in this video you might want to write down. Here's the practical version. Before you paste an API key into any tool, the pre-paste checklist. 5 yes or no questions. 1. Do I know what provider this key belongs to? 2. Do I know what this key can access? 3. Can I revoke it quickly? 4. Is there a usage limit or cost cap? 5. Is the tool clear about where the key is stored, locally, encrypted, or on a server somewhere? If a tool cannot answer those 5 questions, that does not automatically make it evil, but it does mean you should slow down, and that is the entire video, compressed. API keys are not something to fear, they are something to respect. The moment you understand this, BYOK stops sounding like a nerd ritual. It is a control mechanism, a way to connect powerful services without giving away more of the workflow than necessary. In the next video, niche research. Because once you understand that data comes from somewhere, the next question becomes much more interesting. How do you read market signals without asking AI to invent confidence out of thin air? That is where niche research becomes less about guessing and more about evidence. So the takeaway is one sentence. An API key is a controlled permission. Treat it like one. Own it when it makes sense. Limit it when you can. Revoke it when needed. And never confuse a convenient tool with a transparent workflow. Less panic, more control. That is the whole point. Quick thing. That printable checklist I mentioned earlier, Faceless, YouTube, automationhq.com/resources. Email goes in, checklist comes out. No tracking circus, no upsell, no newsletter you did not ask for. Just the one page. Tape it next to your password manager. Forget about it. Find it again in 6 months and realize you have not pasted a single stupid key into a single stupid tool the entire time.